I don't know how much this chainsaw was, but I'm guessing the chainsaw is probably like maybe tops $200. So you got a $200 chainsaw. You're going to have very cheap fuel caps, oil cap, which you say, who cares as long as it seals gas up, right? Now here's part of the problem. These gas caps typically do this all the time. Is that usually you're going to have to stick a screwdriver in here to get these to loosen because the seals that they use is a very cheap type of rubber. Now next, obviously, there's not a whole lot of power, and to compensate for that, this one has a skip tooth change, so it's skipping quite a few drivers. It's about 1 to 2 drivers on each tooth. So it's not really a full house chain. And what I mean by that, it doesn't have an alternating tooth for every driver. Another thing that this saw's horrendous at is that when you're cutting stuff, the entire thing vibrates. There's no vibration absorption whatsoever other than your body. So I can run this for a good tank, and by then my hands are so numb from buzzing at such a high frequency that I can't stand it. Another one of the really, really big things, oh look at that, this thing's scripting fuel. I didn't even know I had gas in it. Another one of the really big things is that the filters on these are usually like foam. Sometimes you'll get a paper element. For the most part, these are pretty cheap. Now, I've cut a ton of shit with this thing. Great unit. I got it from my grandpa. It's done a fabulous job. Like I said, I don't know how much I've cut with it before I got my nice ones. That's what I was using. So this is, for reference, that was a Poulin 4018, and this is a Husqvarna 455 Rancher. Now this is still kind of a consumer saw, but this just happens to be one of the top of the line consumer saws. I believe there's maybe a 460 Rancher, but I can't remember. There's only maybe 1 or 2 saws above this. This one's going to be about 500 to 600, if I want to remember. This one I've actually got a lightweight bar on it. It's also got kind of a different polymer on the inside of the bar itself, so it's a lot more lubricating. This has obviously got a full house chain on it with, if you see, some pretty nasty teeth. I believe it's a 3/8. And, you know, same thing. I've cut a ton of stuff with this. That is I don't think it's actually a 40 cc, it might be 38, 39, but this is a 56 cc, 56 cc's, and this one's got a very fancy air filter. You can clean it out, reuse it. It's got something called a decompression valve right here that you push in, and when you pull it over to start it makes it a lot easier because it's got a lot of power. And when it does fire up, that decompression valve will just pop right back out. See here next, the recoil on it has got kind of some shock absorption, so when it does fire up, it's not going to hurt. It's also got this steel boss in here, so when this cord goes back in, it doesn't damage the case. It's also got vanes on the inside of here, which filter out the bigger particles of air so that it gets a finer control of dust. It's got 2 bar nuts and the adjusters on the outside, whereas that one's on the inside. Vibration absorption, this thing's crazy, you can't feel a thing. But again, this still isn't top of the line. Let's go to the next one I've got. This is my Echo CS 330T. It's called an arborist saw because the handle and the trigger and everything's on the top, so it's meant for being in the tree, or just, in my case, when I don't feel like bringing a 56 cc saw and I need something that's got some power. This chain's pretty loose just because it's a new chain, so kind of ignore that. I haven't really tightened it yet. But a lot of features you're going to see on this thing are, again, pro level stuff. You're going to have the control all up in here, so you can do all this with one hand. Starting it's the same thing. You got the nice steel boss in here, nice elastic cord so it doesn't hurt your hand when you try to start it. The air filter on this one, you can actually access it without any tools whatsoever. And this is, like I said, this is when you're getting higher up. So, jeez! Evidently somebody needs to do a little bit of cleaning. I run the heck out of this thing too. If I had to tell you how many gallons of fuel I've ran through this little guy, I have no idea. All I know is that this little thing has made me tons of money. Tons of money. And I love it. It doesn't take up a lot of room. It's just super reliable. Not that that one's not reliable, but this is just crazy. Now we get to this guy. This is a Husqvarna. I've just put this back together, except why it's loose. But this is the Husqvarna T540 XP. Now this is about a $700 saw. This one is 38 cc's. And there's a lot of features on this thing. For one, you've got these super aggressive dogs. And that's for sticking it into the wood and using leverage to cut so that you're not using your body to cut. Vibration absorption is crazy. You can't feel anything on this. This is roughly 2.5 horsepower. And that one up there is almost 4 right now, probably, the way I've got it ported out. And that one that we began with, that was maybe, 1.5 horse. Not very super powerful, but same thing, full house chain. I take it back, it's got skip tooth, but this one cuts like butter when it gets going. Same thing. You do need a tool for this, but really you can just use your chainsaw wrench. Both my arbor saws have these that you use to tie up in a tree, so that way when you let go of them to grab the the tree itself, so it doesn't kick you off. This is just to kind of secure it, keep it from hitting the ground. Obviously, again, you can shut it off, all that kind of stuff from up here. This is kind of goofy the way this is set up, but this one, another reason this one is so expensive is because it has it has a digital carburetor. And what I mean by that, there's actually an ignition control module in here that advances and retards the timing, and there's an air filter meter that counts and calculates how much airflow is actually coming into the saw, and there's a electric servos on the carburetor itself, so it's always adjusting. So you're saying, why would you want any of that? And I'll tell you, it's because you can fire this thing up, and within probably the first 5 to 10 seconds, you can just start cutting, go to town, whatever. It's very reliable, except for right now. It's very reliable. And because the bigger thing is, when you come into winter months, now the air is more dense, so saws tend to run a lot worse because they don't have as much fuel, as much fuel opened up. So sometimes they bog out and die. And then you get to summer, so say you've adjusted it for the winter, well now you get to summer, everything's super hot, so now you're dumping tons of fuel, and then the saw doesn't want to run good. It wants to just slow down. So this is where this guy comes into play, because like I said, you pull the cord, it fires up. It doesn't care what the temperature is, it doesn't care how much, altitude, all that kind of stuff. It has various sensors in here that it uses to check conditions, and it adjusts itself, and then you cut the wood and you go to town. So this is the progression of the saws that I've owned. If you're ever, like I said, wondering how in the world a chainsaw can cost anywhere from $150, $100 to $2,000, this should open up your eyes a little bit. Set on a steel 500i. And what that is Steel's fuel-injected chainsaw. It has a fuel injector in it. It has a stator. It is everything that a car is inside of one of these guys. That thing, you can start it up and immediately grab the throttle, and it's ready to go. It has race car-like acceleration to it. I believe it's about 7 horsepower, so it's way more than what I'm ever going to use, but hey, if I ever get a big enough job, I might actually go after it.